Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. We're going to continue with the retrieve series. I've gotten so much positive feedback from viewers that are enjoying the different retrieves that I use with different baits and different techniques. And I truly believe that it's important, valuable information for a couple of reasons. A lot of you guys are really experienced anglers, tournament level anglers that are really successful on the water. But the reality is, maybe one or two of these retrieves that I'm sharing are things that you don't do or don't try regularly, and you're finding that these are useful. I've gotten so many positive feedback comments from individuals that thought, they knew all the great retrieves, and then I slid one in there that they weren't doing, and they found it to be successful. So that's huge. The other end of the spectrum is there's a lot of beginners out there that are going into, say, a bait shop, and they see a swim jig or they see a various bait that they've never used before, and they don't really know how to use it. So not only am I giving them one or two retrieves, I'm giving them 3 retrieves with the whole setup, and it's a good way for the beginners to learn. So for some of you, maybe this is old news. For some of you, maybe this is completely new news. In either case, I think it's good to learn or get a refresher so that the next time you head out on the water, you might catch 1 or 2 extra fish by imparting some of these retrieves. So they've been really successful. The viewers seem to really like them. So I'm going to continue doing them until you guys tell me you don't enjoy them. But I'm going to talk about one of my absolute favorite baits today. This is the Swim Jig. This is my favorite one. It's the Dirty Jigs Swim Jig, just the regular size. And I've got it here with the 3.5-inch Berkeley, the Deal, which is my favorite trailer at the moment. This pairing seems to work wonders. This color specifically is Spot Remover. This is like my favorite go-to color that Dirty Jigs makes, especially if I'm river fishing like the Wisconsin River behind me, or any river that's got a little bit off-colored water. The Mississippi River is another place that this color just seems to shine, because it's pretty much, in my opinion, the #1 color you can throw for smallmouth, and at the same time the largemouth like it as well, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. But we're going to talk about the Swim Jig, because the Swim Jig is one of those baits that you can make work on a straight retrieve. But if you're only straight retrieving it, you're missing out. There's several different retrieves that I like to do with this, and a lot of you guys, if you're in different parts of the country, you know some of these retrieves. So it's really interesting to me to see how much a Swim Jig's retrieve varies by areas in the country. If you go down to Alabama, they got one thing. If you come up here in the North Country, you got another thing. So it really is interesting to see how a bait like the Swim Jig varies from place to place. I don't know of another technique that has such a regional technique specific retrieve. So it's interesting. So we'll talk about that. From a setup with the Swim Jig, I personally like to go with a 3/8 ounce. That's the standard size. Depending on conditions, I might go lighter if I want it higher in the water. I might go deeper or heavier if I want to get it deeper. From a rod and reel standpoint, I've got it here on the MGX, Revo MGX. This is an 8.0 to 1, so it's a fast retrieve reel. But I'm doing that because I like to be able to pick up line if I'm giving the bait a lot of pops. It allows me to get a faster hook set. And then I paired it up here with the MHX NMB 873, which is a 7'3" medium heavy fast action rod, custom rod that I build. And then from a line point, my standard choice is 15-pound Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon. Now I will switch that up to like a 40-pound braid, an X9 braid, if I'm fishing heavy cover. But if I'm just, say, out here on the river where I'm pitching to some wood and some laydowns and we don't really have much grass, I'm not going to go with braided line. I'm going to stick with the fluorocarbon. Personal preference. There's a lot of debate out there from you guys which is better, but that's just comes down to what you have more confidence in, and I really like to throw the fluorocarbon first if I can get away with it. So let's talk about some retrieves. Before I head down on the water, I do want to remind you, if you're looking to support the channel, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link that I put in the description of the video. A little bit of the proceeds will be kicked back to the channel, and it helps support me putting out the videos like this and putting the time and effort into it. So if you can use the Tackle Warehouse affiliate link that I provide, it's greatly appreciated. You can bookmark that same link for future purchases as well if you don't want to forget about it in the future. In either case, guys, I appreciate all of you that are watching on a regular basis. Let's go down to the water. Okay, we've got here the Berkley deal on a Dirty Jigs regular swim jig, one of my favorite combos like I mentioned. We're gonna go over our different retrieves. The first retrieve really is a straight retrieve to a point, but the whole goal here is you don't want to just straight retrieve. You wanna fish a target with a swim jig. You wanna bounce it off things. So there's a little stick up down there. I'm gonna cast to it and I'm gonna reel it straight, but I'm gonna reel it so that I make contact with like that rock or that little stick up, and I'm just gonna reel it, straight in from the standpoint of I want to make contact with something. So if you've got a little bush, a little stick up, you're trying to make contact. When you hit that contact, you kill it or give it a little pop. So it's a straight retrieve until you make contact, then you kill it or you impart a little bit of additional action. And at that point, you're gonna retrieve it back like you normally would, but you gotta remember here, the key is to make contact with your target. So if you're fishing through pads, hit the pad stems. If you're fishing through grass, tick the tops of grass. If you're fishing around wood, run it into the wood. If you're fishing around docks, hit the dock post. That's what a swim jig is for. You beat this bait up. So it's a straight retrieve to make contact for the most part with what it is that you're fishing. When you hit the dock post, kill it or pop it off the side. Do one of the two things to try to create a reaction strike. So it is a basic retrieve. You're not doing anything special because the whole goal is to hit the object that you're fishing. It's one of my absolute favorite things to do with a swim jig because they are so weedless. You can beat them up. You can really throw them into the targets and try to make contact. So that's the first way to do it. It's not necessarily a retrieve. It's just simply to throw it out, reel it straight into a target and make contact with it. So then you create a deflection, which creates strikes. So that's one. If you're down south, say in the Alabama area, you've probably heard of the Alabama shake. I've done videos on the Alabama shake before. This is where you keep your rod tip up, you keep your bait on the surface, and you're literally just popping your rod tip. You're doing this just to get your swim jig to dance right under the surface. Super popular in Alabama, but it works up here in the North Country as well. So if you're bringing it over grass or around docks, it doesn't really matter. The goal here is you're keeping it high up in the water column. My bait's right under the surface. It's just constant twitching and popping to keep your bait high up in the water column and then keep it under the surface. So it looks like a shad flickering, a shad spawning and deflecting off objects. That's what you're going for with that. One key with the Alabama shake though is when you put a trailer on, I wouldn't recommend a trailer like the Berkley deal here, which sits vertical on the hook shank. Try throwing like a Berkley meaty chunk, something that is flat, so that when you put it on the hook, the trailer is like this, and that horizontal body motion will actually grab water and keep the bait rising. So like a chunk style trailer is a great way, a great trailer to use on a swim jig where you're doing the Alabama shank and imparting that popping action. But that's just pretty much a straight retrieve with a bunch of rod tips. So you're just popping it on the surface. You will get some absolutely vicious strikes when you're doing that. It's a pretty fun way to fish. It is a little bit more physical because you got to continuously make those rod pops with your wrist, but it's something that really works well and generates a lot of additional strikes. So that's the second retrieve. The third retrieve is one that I really like to do. That's more of what I consider a sweeping motion. So you throw it out and I'll use the rod and just kind of sweep it. I'm trying to create that fleeing bait fish and then kill it. And that's where you get your strikes. So it's a fleeing type bait fish action. I'm not stroking it where I'm hitting it hard. I'm basically getting it to come up. If you can see that bait, it flutters up. And then when you kill it, it slowly flutters and glides back down. It's a great way to generate strikes if you're fishing around areas that have submergent weed growth that are a little bit lower in the water column and you want to keep your swim jig down to them. Because what happens is when I let that bait settle, I'm letting it fall to the bottom. If I'm fishing rock, I let it fall to the bottom. If I'm fishing weed, I let it fall to the bottom. And then when I go to sweep it, it bursts out of that grass or it bursts off the rock bottom. And that gives it that idea that it's getting away from the bait fish or getting away and the bass can't resist that. So they go and they react on it and they bite it. But it's simply just a sweeping motion. You can do it harder if you want. The key here is, though, I feel like your bait doesn't look quite as natural if you really rip it hard. It'll explode well, but then it doesn't glide quite as nice as I prefer. I like to have a little bit more of a controlled slack line. So it's a nice sweep of probably 6 feet, hit the bottom, sweep, pick up the slack, sweep, pick up the slack. And you're getting, I'm getting that bait really to pop off the bottom nice. And it's a great way to generate strikes from fish that are a little bit more lethargic or buried down in the weeds. If I were straight retrieving that, ticking off the top of the weeds, I wouldn't create the same reaction strike as I would that's got a bait that's buried down in the grass a little and then pops out. So it's a sweep, let it go to the bottom, reel your slack line in, sweep, let it go down, almost like you're fishing like a swimming worm in a way. And that's a good way to generate strikes. So guys, those are my 3 retrieves that I really like to fish. Anytime I'm throwing a swim jig, it's the Alabama shake, a sweep, let fall to the bottom retrieve, or a straight deflect off twigs, deflect off pad stems, docks, whatever I can hit in the water, I'm running my swim jig into it. Great way to generate strikes. I hope this was helpful. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have another video coming out tomorrow.